Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking the deeply toxic negotiation tactics and the absolute psychological influence Thanos wields over the Kree. We're using their famously tense confrontation as our primary case study. You know, if you've ever wanted to understand the sheer mechanics of power, intimidation, and how leverage is literally weaponized in high-stakes environments, well, you're absolutely in the right place. We aren't just looking at a conversation today. We're breaking down a masterclass in dominance step by step. So let's get right into it.
Okay, let's kick things off right at the boiling point. Bathe the starways in your blood. I mean, wow, this is the ultimate terrifying threat that completely defines this entire interaction. It proves, without a shadow of a doubt, who truly holds the power here. Normally, when you enter a negotiation, you expect some back and forth, right? A mutual exchange of value. But as we're going to see, Thanos operates on a completely different paradigm. This isn't a negotiation, it's a promise of annihilation.
So let's look at Phase 1, a partnership at risk. To really understand how we get to that life or death ultimatum, we first need to establish the uneven ground of this so-called alliance between the Kree and Thanos. On paper, sure, they have an agreement, a mutual goal. But as our sources reveal, the foundation of this partnership is incredibly fragile and, honestly, actively crumbling. The Kree are being warned that their partnership with Thanos is at risk because Gamora has been captured. She's been sent to the Kylan, and intelligence suggests she's got her own plans entirely. Basically, this means the Kree are completely failing to hold up their end of the bargain. They were supposed to deliver, but instead, they've hit a massive operational roadblock. And in a partnership with a guy like Thanos, failure isn't just a minor setback, it's a critical liability.
This brilliantly illustrates the massive gap in perception between the two parties regarding where they actually stand. On side A, we have the Kree's approach. They're demanding respect and trying to shift the blame to Gamora, but then look at side B, Thanos' approach. To him, this isn't a friendly catch-up, it's a required presence, an absolute summons. The Kree representative walks in trying to demand respect, attempting to negotiate like an equal. Meanwhile, Thanos doesn't see a partner at all, he just sees a subordinate.
Let's look a little closer at the Kree's tactic here. The Kree representative, Ronan the Accuser, tries to negotiate from a position of strength, pointing the finger directly at Thanos' daughter to shift the blame. With all due respect, Thanos, your daughter made this mess. It's a classic defensive maneuver, right? He's trying to maintain his own status by highlighting the flaws in Thanos' own ranks. But listen, when you're dealing with someone who holds absolute power, playing the blame game is a seriously dangerous strategy.
And honestly, his facade immediately cracks. Just listen to his tell. Ronan complains about being brought there, actually uttering the phrase, "and yet you summon me." Just by admitting that he was forced to answer a direct summons, he is fundamentally undermining his own posturing. I mean, you don't get summoned by your equal. You get summoned by your boss, your ruler, or your conqueror. In one breath, he tries to act superior, and in the very next, he inadvertently admits his complete subservience.
Which brings us to Phase 2, the tactic of belittlement.
Once Thanos recognizes Ronan's weak attempt at asserting dominance, he doesn't just argue back. He systematically deconstructs his entire sense of self-worth. Feeling the control slipping away, Ronan makes a desperate plea for basic professional respect. "I only asked that you take this matter seriously." It sounds reasonable enough, right? But in this specific power dynamic, it exposes a fatal vulnerability. It shows that Ronan actually cares about how Thanos perceives him. And that plea for validation, that is exactly the opening Thanos needs to completely dismantle him.
Notice Thanos' strategic pivot here. It's actually genius in a dark way. He completely bypasses the logistics of Gamora's capture by the Nova Corps. He essentially gives the Kree a cosmic talk to the hand. He doesn't want to talk about the tactical failure, the Kylan, or the missing items. Instead, he goes straight for personal degradation. He attacks the Kree's ego. Before you can physically threaten someone who thinks they're powerful, you first have to break their mind and show them how small they truly are.
And he unleashes rapid-fire ammunition to do just that. He calls him a boy. He states flat out, "Your politics bore me." He says his demeanor is out of a pouting child. And to top the whole thing off, he blames him because he alienated my favorite daughter. Thanos rapidly fires off these insults, effectively stripping away all Kree authority. By labeling Ronan as a boring, pouting child, he firmly establishes him as a mere subordinate rather than a cosmic equal. It's an absolute masterclass in verbal subjugation.
Moving right along to Phase 3, the ultimate Kree ultimatum.
So Thanos has broken down the Kree's defenses, dismissed his political standing, and reduced him to the status of a literal child. Now, and only now, is the ground fully prepared for Thanos to lay down the absolute law. The crucial takeaway here is that Thanos radically redefines the very concept of an agreement. In his vocabulary, an agreement isn't a mutual consensus where both parties benefit evenly. No, it is a delayed ultimatum enforced by absolute violence. When Thanos says, "I shall honor our agreement," he isn't making a promise of partnership. He's making a promise of execution if his conditions aren't met. He lays out a terrifyingly simple procedure. Step 1, return to me again empty-handed. Step 2, Thanos bathes the Starways in Kree blood. Just like that, he transforms a complex diplomatic negotiation into a brutal, binary promise of total annihilation if they fail him again. There is absolutely no room for excuses, no room for discussing the Nova Corps, no room for shifting the blame. It's simple. Produce results or face extinction. Let's wrap this up with Phase 4, the leverage of power.
Let's step back for a second and look at what this entire exchange actually teaches us about the nature of absolute leverage. Leverage is the underlying currency of every interaction we've looked at today. The Kree really thought they had it. Thanos knew for a fact they didn't. He bluntly highlights the reality of the situation with a single cutting observation. You are the one here with nothing to show for it. And that is the ultimate truth of their meeting. The Kree have zero leverage because they're empty-handed. They brought no value, only excuses. Meanwhile, Thanos holds the ultimate trump card of unparalleled destructive capability. You just cannot negotiate when you have nothing to offer and everything to lose.
And this is exactly why this matters for you to understand, whether we're analyzing fictional warlords or real-world power dynamics. Agreements are entirely meaningless if one side holds all the cards and dictates the terms purely through fear. When one party holds absolute power, an alliance is really just subjugation in disguise. The Kree were never partners. They were tools, being used right up until they threatened to become a liability. What makes this explainer even more fascinating is that we see this toxic, terrifying dynamic mirrored by his own family right after the exchange. We hear this dark sarcasm echoed by his own daughter, Nebula, reacting to his tyrannical version of fairness. She just says, "Thanks, Dad. Sounds fair." His own inner circle recognizes the absurdity of his agreements. They know firsthand that his sense of fairness is just a thin veil for absolute tyranny. It's basically a workplace HR violation of galactic proportions.
I want to leave you with this provocative thought to consider about the true nature of power, dominance, and the inevitable breaking point of ruling by absolute fear. Can an alliance forged entirely in fear and ultimatums ever truly survive? Or does that level of psychological influence and subjugation naturally breed the very betrayal it tries to prevent? Think about that as you reflect on the mechanics of power we've explored today. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and definitely keep questioning the structures of power you see around you.